Happy Friday, guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Dubs. I'm your host, Bill T. Well, today's Friday when you're hearing this, but it's Thursday today, and today is your boy's birthday. That's right. And what have I been doing on my birthday? A podcast for you guys. Why? Because I love it. Happiest birthday gift to me was some emails that I got earlier today from some of the people that listen to the podcast. So I definitely appreciate and really enjoy getting emails from people that let me know how much they appreciate the podcast. And I definitely love being able to create content for you guys. And today is no exception. Today we're going south, north of the border, south of Las Vegas. We're going to Tucson, Arizona. Joe Chirco is who's on the podcast today with Chirco Vw, the largest VW shop, 40 years running in Tucson, Arizona. One of the interesting things is there's a connection between Tucson, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada, and one of his competitors down there, which is really insane. And if you'll notice, one of these days I'm going to do a Vegas special for you guys, because what we found out on the previous podcast with Auto Haas is that they had intentions to build a store or open a store here in Las Vegas before they shut down their business. And there was another store in Vegas. So Vegas has got a big tumultuous history with Volkswagen shops. And one day I'm going to do a Vegas special. So like Dan Tana will probably be on it with me. And if you don't know who Dan Tana is, Google it. Okay. Google Dan Tana Vegas, bro. And that's everybody that's my age. And today or yesterday, as you're listening to this, I turned 52. And if you're 52, you would know who Dan Tana is. So it's good stuff. And everybody dreamed to live like that dude and have their car parked in their living room. And there's nothing cooler than that. So I digress. Today's podcast is cool. We get to hear from Joe Chirco. So good stuff. A lot of history in the desert. A lot of cool stories about special finds that he had. Some wild off-road stories, and a lot of cool history in the VW hobby. So it's definitely something you want to listen. And listen, man, before you shake your head and think, oh, I don't know, I'm into cow lick or this, that. Well, I'll tell you, there's a connection to Dean Lowry with Tucson, Arizona that's in this podcast as well that you probably don't know about. So lots of cool stuff to learn on today's podcast. But before we jump into that, make sure you guys support the people that support Let's Talk Dubs. That's VW Trends Magazine, a magazine for the people, by the people. And go subscribe today at vwtrendsmagazine.com. Also, Ross Wolf, high performance aftermarket quality parts built for enthusiasts by enthusiasts. Not some new pretty face on the scene. I mean, Jason's not super pretty, and Jared's kind of questionable. But listen, they make some good parts, man. So go check those guys out at Ross Wolf with a U, Ross Wolf with a U, rosswolf.com. Go get you some gangster stuff like I got on some of my cars. Go get yourself some billet shift rod couplers or a dash repair panel for your bus. Or how about some stainless steel decklet hinges? Or my favorite, the locking dipstick. Go get it today at Ross Wolf. Eye candy performance parts for your Volkswagen. So I'm excited to get this podcast out to you guys. It's the true story of a guy who loves Volkswagen so much, he commits his life to it, man. And it's a great story from nothing to the longest lasting shop in Tucson, Arizona. Still going strong today. 6 bays, pumping out work, and air-cooled restorations and maintenance and maintaining only. So pretty impressive if you ask me. And so that's what we're going to listen to today. So without any further ado, guys, let's get into it. Joe Chirco with Chirco Vw on Let's Talk Dubs.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen. It's got everything that people who like the bug like.
Okay, everybody. So on today's podcast, we're back stateside, and what I love more than anything else is to get people that are lifers in the VW scene and have committed themselves to the hobby. And today's podcast guest is no exception. If you're in the Arizona area at all, you've heard of Chirco Vw. Even in the Southwest, you've heard of Chirco Vw. They've been in business since 1984 for going on this year 40 years, and they're out of Tucson, Arizona. Joe Churco, the operator and owner of that business, is on the podcast today, and they've been putting on a show you may know of called Bugtoberfest. It's the third Sunday for the last 28 years, third Sunday in October. And so on today's podcast, I'd like to welcome Joe Churco with Chirco Vws. Joe, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
Joe, the way we always start this podcast is the same for every guest. And you've been you're going on 40 years in the business right now, which is awesome. And so the way we always start the podcast is, what's your VW story and how did you get into Volkswagens?
Wow, that's interesting. You know, it's crazy. I'm sitting here in my office and I'm looking around at my walls. And if these walls could talk, I mean, I've got so much stuff just from all the years hanging in here. But I'll tell you what started me. In fact, I gave the story to Impy just last year, I guess it was. They were here in high school, early in high school. In fact, I wasn't even driving yet. I'd walked past this old guy's house, and he had a Volkswagen in his driveway. Mm-hmm. The belly pan was, the body was off the pan. The tranny was in the backyard. It was just, he was building this car. And actually it was a Baja. And so that had to be like 78, 79, something like that.
Yeah.
And I would stop in and just, my dad was a gearhead. My dad was into Packards, right? Well, Packards were cool, but it wasn't my thing, right? I was kind of more into the off-road and just getting it kind of into the scene of cars myself. Anyway, this old guy, kind of took me under his wing. He's like showing me his car and, the air cooled this and that, everything that's cool about it. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. So from time to time, I would just stop in and see how this guy's doing. Well, this guy was a chain smoker and he had a huge beard. He was an old dude. And he's like, I go up one day and I said, how's it going? He says, it's good. He says, Joe, he says, if I give you this car, will you finish it? And I'm like, get the hell out of here. Hell yes, I will. Right? I'm like, hell yes. Now I couldn't drive, right? I'm walking to school and home, right? Yeah. But I gathered up some buddies and I'll never forget this, man. We pull up to this guy's house. We load everything on it. We go to my dad's house and we dump everything in the backyard. And my dad's got a big garage in the backyard. We're working in the dirt outside of the shop. And I'll never forget this. Big Jeff Jones, he barely fit through a doorway. He's a big guy. He says, let's start the engine. And I'm like, okay. So I go to grab the transaxle and drag the tranny over to bolt it up. And he's like, oh, no, man, just go get some gas and a battery charger. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. So I run in the garage. I plug in a battery charger. I carry it out. We power the motor up. We prime the carburetor. And I'm not shitting you, with a crescent wrench, he turns the motor over. No way. And I'm holding the shroud and he's cranking the pulley, right? He's cranking the nut on the pulley. This freaking thing starts. So imagine two guys looking at each other, right? And him smiling and cranking the throttle. Whom, right? And dirt's flying because we're in the dirt and the fan's blowing the dirt. I was freaking hooked. Yeah. Absolutely hooked. Changed my life. Not only did I finish that car, but I was in high school. I was buying and selling cars. And then from there, Johnny's and Mr. Bug was like the big thing, right? I started, because I was building cars. There was only one game in Tucson. It was Off-Road Buggy Supply. Yeah. And I went in there and I'll never forget it. I was at the counter and I needed some bumper brackets for a Baja, right? Mm-hmm. And they're like $2 brackets, right? They're nothing. They're just stamped steel. And he goes, yeah, let me go get you some. And I watched him. He walks in the back room. He dumps this old box over and he's digging around. And he comes and throws them on the counter. He said, $25. And I'm like, what? He was a grumpy old guy too. And I'm like, no, I'll make my own, right? Yeah. From that night on, I started making contacts. I told my dad was a home builder at that time. I said, Dad, I want to start selling parts for these cars. And his hobby, like I said, was Packards. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, check it out. See what you can find. And, see if we can, find the suppliers. Well, that was easy. I mean, don't tell me something twice. So we make, I called Johnny's at that time, and they're the kings making Baja kits and all the bumpers and all that stuff. And we literally took one of his flatbed trucks, emptied all the cement mixers and all the wheelbarrows, unhooked the cement mixer, and we drove this big state bed out to Johnny's Speed and Chrome, and we filled that truck with Baja kits and bumpers and sidebars and shocks and tires and wheels, everything. And I started selling at the swap meet. And that's how I started, It's just absolutely a hobby that turned into a lifelong business and hobby all in one. It was cool, and it's still very cool every day.
Now, so you start selling stuff at the swap meet. So you go to Johnny's and then like just buy in as like a distributor for Tucson, and then you're selling at the swap meets, all that stuff. And so
I mean, I had a reserve space at the local swap meet here in town. So I would sell on Wednesday night, right? Then I would sell on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. You know, so Friday it was evening, 4 o'clock till midnight or whatever.
Yeah.
Saturday it was 8 a.m. to midnight, and then Sunday it was like 8 to 6. And you can imagine, hauling all that stuff out there every day and setting up and tearing down and setting up and tearing down. That was a chore. So I got a bright idea. So I'm going to build a big trailer, and I pegboarded the inside of this trailer, right? So I would take it out Wednesday and just open it up like a store, right?
Really?
And bring it back home. And then Friday night, I would open it up like a store, and it was cool. I had a counter, had a TV, had air conditioning, everything was cool. I plugged right in. I had everything I needed, cash register, everything. And everybody would go out there on, normally on the weekends and buy their stuff. They knew I'd be out there.
That's cool.
And I just, from that, it turned into, we're going to build a store. This thing is awesome. Right.
Yeah.
And we did. In 1984, we laid every block in this building that I'm still sitting in. And, we're 16,000 square foot on 22nd Street, the main drag in Tucson, selling Volkswagen parts.
Oh, wow. So you're
pretty crazy.
So your dad built the building that you're in?
Yeah. He was a home builder. And then all of his buddies and that, he got everybody together and made the plans and said, hey, look, we're going to build this store. And we did the plans. We built the store. And at that time, we actually sold parts for everything, though. But that didn't last long, right? I was like, Dad, I'm not into selling, a wheel cylinder for a Cadillac. That didn't turn me on at all.
Right.
So I nixed all that stuff, and we went 100% Volkswagen. But I mean, restorations and, everything we could do. In fact, in the early days, we even made all the Baja kits and all that stuff.
So
we made our own molds and all that.
So you ended up, I mean, obviously there's a level of off-roading that's happening. And what's interesting is that you bring up off-road buggy supply. Well, there's one of the last VW shops here in town is called Nevada Off-Road Buggy. Mm-hmm. And
he used to own that,
and
the same guy owned that one and sold
correct.
It to those guys.
Well, he just up and left. That's the story behind that. So Bob McCachran, who's Rob McCachran's dad, the racer,
right?
Bob McCachran just passed away about a year ago, and it was chase him down to get his history. And I said, "How did you get started?" He says, "Well, I was a home builder here, and we were doing stuff, and I own this shopping center, and this guy came in from Arizona, had a place called Off-Road Buggy Supply, and then just one day he just disappeared. And I called the guy and said, "What are you doing here?" He says, just keep everything in there for the rent that I ain't coming back to Vegas." You know what I mean?
Oh my God.
And so that's how Nevada Off-Road Buggy got started. And so that's the second time I've ever heard the name Off-Road Buggy Supply.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because, the big thing in Nevada, and I'm sure in Arizona as well, was off-roading. I mean, that had to be like was it more popular in Tucson off-roading than it was?
Oh yeah. In the early 80s. Oh my God. Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, there was nothing to sell 3 or 4 Baja kits in a weekend. I mean, that's just the way it was. And then I was living at my folks' house. I took over their 4-car garage, right? And set that up like a store. And people would come during the week and buy stuff from me. It was crazy. Wow. But speak of off-road buggy supply, right? Remember the guy went in to get the bumper brackets, and he, was overpriced and changed my whole life because I went to Johnny's and all that stuff. Well, that was off-road buggy supply. Fast forward, right? 15 years later, I not only bought all his bumper brackets, but I bought everything he had and shut him down.
So, based on the little bit that I knew of this guy, it seemed like Vegas wasn't a good fit for him, and who knows why. And
well, we know why.
He wasn't long for this game, I guess. You know what I mean? Especially when you go, the new startup guy goes and ends up, starting a business. Then shortly thereafter, what year did you buy him out?
Oh God, I just saw a pamphlet on this in my desk. I was cleaning something out. This might be it right here. Let me look.
That's too funny.
This agreement, hang on. Between Arthur, yeah. That's funny. This agreement is made this 13th day of November, 2001.
Wow.
2001, off-road buggy supply, here and after called as the seller, and Chirco Automotive Inc., an Arizona corporation, purchaser. Yeah, there's the real deal documents right there.
That is insane. And so now your education with like building motors, doing all that stuff, doing whatever you do, comes from just hands-on, self-taught everything?
100%. 100%.
So
yeah, I mean,
you had your early mentors when you were doing it?
Well, so I did. So obviously, you know that Dean Lowry came from Tucson.
Right.
He had a shop just down on Speedway. And as a kid, right, I mean, I would go in there and peek over his shoulder and try to learn anything I could, right?
Yeah.
And Marla, I don't remember Marla, his daughter, she would be back there porting heads. You just see shavings flying, you know? And they would race their cars out here and all that stuff. But I would peek over Dean's shoulder as much as I could till he'd run me off, right?
Yeah.
But I got a whole nother story about that. But one of Dean's good customers was a fella named Jerry Tancost. And Jerry was a sand dune guy, right? And Jerry had the coolest of everything. He had a big carpet store here in Tucson. Well, my sister ended up marrying a Tancost,
oh,
right?
Really?
And it was his uncle, right? So he would always say, hey, go hang out with Jerry. So I would. And Jerry built some cool stuff.
Yeah.
So Jerry taught me a lot of stuff of the early day stuff too.
Really?
Which is really cool. And then here just recently, to bring Dean back into the picture, gosh, this is probably only maybe 3 or 4 years ago. A friend of my dad's, this guy owned a lock and safe company here in town. He used to be a big sand buggy guy.
Yeah.
And he had one of Dean's motors that Dean did from him back in the 70s under his workbench, right? And he's like, you know, you better give this to Joe, because he started getting ill, and he eventually did pass away. But he gave me that Dean Lowry motor, right, with the big IDAs and stuff on it.
Really?
And it's sitting here just like I got it in my showroom, just like that guy gave it to me.
That's wild.
So another interesting thing, when Dean left Tucson, right, a guy named Tom Serdez worked for Dean. Well, when Dean left, Tom got his dyno, right, that he ran all the engines on.
Yeah.
Well, Tom never used it, or used it very seldom, and it ended up in a shed somewhere. And Tom, like a few years ago, said, Joe, you know, I've got Dean's dyno. Do you want it? And I said, are you kidding me? Hell yes, I want it. So he brought that over. Now I'm going to restore both of those things and put them back together, you know, in memory of Dean. I just think that's a cool thing to do.
Now, when's the first time you meet Dean Lowry, and is he, because Dean Lowry was, you know, racing legend from the 60s, right? So,
oh my God, he's the godfather.
Was he from Tucson, or he moved to Tucson after he left California, or what's?
No, so I mean, I don't know how he ended. I don't know how his beginnings started, but he was in Tucson in the 70s, late 70s. Then he moved to Riverside. That's when he moved to California, right? And that's when they started, you know, the Joe Fatone and all that. And he and all those guys worked together. And then Dean's brother was an engineer and had a foundry and all this stuff. That's when they started making all the aftermarket manifolds and stuff, the Dino stuff. And then not sure how how it all broke apart, but you know, family, business, blah, blah, blah. They all split up. And that's when his brother went off and did ARPM, which later got bought out by Bugpack. Yeah. You know,
well, I mean, there's a lot of history. You know, I just had Rick Mortensen on the podcast.
Oh God, yeah.
A little bit ago. And what's funny is, you know, he moved to Arizona. He moved to Phoenix in the 70s, I think it was. And it's like in the late 70s, early 80s, and he was into the cowlick thing. And he's like, you know, the cowlick it's spread all over in the early days, but it's like there's a lot of, again, one of the reasons I do the podcast, there's a lot of VW history outside of Southern California that is, especially the stuff that would push the limits, right? It's different when you're dealing with a weekend racer who's borrowing and stealing everything he can to try to get to the race the weekend. It's a different deal when a guy who's a home builder walks in and says, I want the fastest thing you can build. Money's no object.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's where you start to see people really starting to push the envelope. Like, well, shoot, this guy's paying for it. Let's throw some money this way. Let's do one of those. And I think it's one of the things that's often overlooked. You know, I always often equate it to like the built versus bought type thing, right? People give someone a hard time who is a businessman, doesn't have a bunch of time, doesn't have the time to put the sweat equity in the garage, but has the money to pay a buddy Hale to build his car. And they bag on that guy. But if it wasn't for that guy, that hobby would never get pushed that far.
Correct. 100%.
Same with the sandrail builders and all that stuff. And so,
yeah,
I think, you know, especially areas in the desert where it's like, cause there's all these guys that a lot of these Cowlook guys have never heard of that have built some super fast stuff and some really powerful, you know, motors and experiment with turbos and all this kind of stuff. Because when you're dealing with the sand, it's a whole different ball game, you know?
Oh yeah.
So now when the first bug that you had, that first bug that you got that was given to you, what was the guy's name that gave it to you?
Gosh darn it. You know what? If you wouldn't have asked me and I told him, I would have told you. You know what? I often think about him. He passed away now. That was a long damn time ago. Yeah. But funny enough, as his son came in here one day, mm-hmm. and we were talking, he was telling me, he remembered the story, you know, and he just come in to visit. And I told him, I said, you know, your dad changed my life. Totally. 100%. If that one thing didn't happen, I would have been on a whole different path. You know, I'd have been a home builder probably. Yeah. But okay. So you probably heard me wrestling around there. Yeah. I have in my hand, you spoke of Rick. Yeah. Sunday, March 31st, 1985. So what year was the very first Bugorama 1? I have the artwork for it in my office. Oh, wow. For the big poster. It's the big wall poster. I have that artwork in my office right now. Phoenix Bugorama number 1. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I think there's a lot of innovation and credit that's not given to some of the outer states around Southern California, because in addition, one of the things I've been wanting to do that I wanted to do with Bob, I wanted Bob McCachran, because his son is probably one of the most winning off-road racers, Rob McCachran. And I wanted to interview his dad to get that story, because his dad has that classic story. He comes out from the East Coast to build patio covers in Vegas. They're contracting. He was a drag racer back east, but what's everybody doing in the desert? Off-road racing. Oh, yeah. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. And as much as Southern California gets a lot of credit for off-road racing, it really started its early days in Las Vegas. And then, the Mint and all that stuff. And a lot of those other things. So, interestingly enough, a lot of technology, and I would be interested to see how much technology came from drag racing versus off-road racing, because off-road racing obviously is longevity and pouring the coals to it for 12 hours straight, you know? Oh yeah. So, it would be interesting to make a comparison chart to see innovations that came from the background of whether it's off-road racing or street racing or drag racing, and see how much was developed out there. Now, that first Baja that you had, what year was the bug? You know, I think it was a 65. So it was a swing axle, link pin front end. Uh-huh. You know, I painted the scallops going over it. You know, it was nothing super trick back in those days. Right. You know, but I mean, it was certainly a looker. I mean, it looked great. Now, but is there a Tucson look? Is there like a Tucson? No, not really. Yeah, we call it Tucson pinstripes. Right. Right. And what that is you got scratches going down all the way, through the sideline of the car. Right. Then, this guy takes his car off road because we're hitting trees with them. And how's the scene because Tucson, what's the total population in Tucson? You know what, Frank, you know what our population is? We're a little over 1 million. Yeah. So Tucson's grown, but when you started, it wasn't near that big. No, 40 years ago here. Hey, hold that thought one second. Yeah, so everybody from California moves there, and it just explodes the population. And Tucson hotter than Phoenix? No, Phoenix is hotter. They claim it's hotter, and I think it's just because of all the darn asphalt up there. So you just bake. Tucson's population 2024 is looks like it's 550,000. So that's Tucson. So it's probably, I would assume you probably said some bedroom communities outside of Tucson, but it looks like it's spiked. So if we're saying around 1980, it would have been around 300,000. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, it's kind of like Vegas, right? It's the forgotten stepchild of the Volkswagen scene. And
Yeah.
what I've always noticed living here in the desert, anytime you find a guy that's got one Volkswagen, he's got more than one.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? And because this is kind of a desert community, people just, they kind of hoard things, especially when you get out to some of these small towns and whatnot. Now, have there been any substantial cars that you can remember, or notable cars or builders that have come out of Tucson?
God, there's a ton. I mean, think of Dean himself, right? I mean,
Right.
that's huge.
Yeah.
But I mean, there was a lot of guys. I mean, there was a lot of guys just in the car culture itself. There was a ton of guys. In fact, we just lost Ed Carlson, who was a phenomenal builder of hot rods and T-buckets and that era, painting Harleys. Hell of a craftsman. Just a few weeks ago, he passed away. I mean, but yeah, I mean, Tucson's got a lot of culture.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff going on with that. Now, when you started getting into Volkswagen, like doing the Volkswagen repair shop, so you build the shop in 1984,
Yep.
and you're starting to sell parts. When do you start getting to the service side of things?
Oh, instantly. We had 6 service bays the day we opened.
Really?
Yeah.
And finding mechanics.
And every one of those 6 bays are
Yeah.
busy still today.
Still to this day?
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Now, and obviously, I would assume you guys have moved on and working on water cooled stuff as well.
You know what's funny?
Uh-huh.
We did our first water cooled car today,
No
and
way.
I didn't even want to do it.
No
But they were
way.
broke down the street, and they brought it in, and it was a Jetta that needed a fuel pump, so we did it for her.
So other than that, you're just strictly air cooled?
We are air cooled to the core.
Wow, that's incredible. And
Yeah.
still no shortage of work.
No, because we do so much different stuff. I mean, so we build engines, we ship engines, right?
Who builds the engines?
John Bull. He's been here 18 years. He's got his own engine room in the back, and that's all he does is put engines together. And he builds the engines for our service department as well, and all the custom stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we do, in-house restorations. We do everything but the paint and body. So we bust the car completely down. We have a select few guys that we send them out to paint. Then they come back. We put the bodies back on the pans, that we restored.
Yeah.
And so we do that, but our service, our regular service, putting floor pans in and clutches and all, we're always busy.
Yeah.
We're always busy.
So you found you've seen no shortage in the work. And then you said you're on how much land you on?
We're on 2.2 acres. The building's 16,000 square foot.
So does that mean you've got a bunch of cars in a yard?
Well, so we used to, but the city kind of frowned onto that.
Really?
But I can assure you, I have a yard that's got a ton of cars in it.
Oh, wow. Now, what's some of the most, here in Vegas, because of the Air Force Base, we would
Right.
get a lot of, like my first Type 34 Ghia was from the Air Force Base that came here. It was imported, but came in through Vegas because it was imported from Germany. And so have you run across some rare stuff in your time that you've been out there?
Yeah, in fact, I've run across even still up till recently cool stuff.
Really?
But the funniest one, there used to be a shop here in Tucson called Barney's Imports. And he did Volkswagen to start, but then he went into Nissan, Toyota, Honda, blah, 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 right? And they had a driver, right, that would drive around town and pick up the stuff and deliver different stuff. And I was talking to him. He was an older guy. I was talking to him one day at the counter, and he says, "Yeah, I've got an old split window bug." I said, "Yeah, sure you do."
Right.
Right?
Does. Yeah.
Everybody does, right? He says, "No," he says, "I've had it in there for years, and I just don't know if I'm going to use it." And I said, "Well, let me know if you ever want to sell it." And that was it, right? I just blew it off. A year later, he calls me. He says, "Hey, come out and look at this car." I said, "Okay, I'll come look at it." So I went out. It was out south by the Santa Fe Mission, so out towards Green Valley area, right?
Yeah.
And he opens this old rickety door, and lo and behold, there is this 51 crotch cooler split window car.
No way.
And I'm sitting here looking at it, and I look at him, and he's like, "Yeah, it's been in here a long time." I said, "I didn't freaking believe you. I thought you were just telling a story." And he says, "Yeah, look up in the rafters." I look up in the rafters, and there's a pair of NOS, groove bumpers, chrome,
Really?
that are wrapped in newspaper from back in the day. And the car was awesome. I bought that car from him. I kept it for probably 15 years. And, I enjoyed it a lot. It was a cool car, but, just in business and everything else, one goes out, the other one comes in. And, I've had some really killer ovals and, restored some really cool cars, and, they all find new homes, but I do have a handful of them currently.
Yeah. So what's your favorite car that you've owned? Do you have one particular that got away that you wish it never got away?
Yeah, I do. I had a 53 ragtop, and it's interesting. I had that car originally, and I bought it out of a salvage yard, and it was sitting on the belly pan.
Yeah.
And somebody had, stripped parts off it and everything. And I bought that car and I brought it here and we started working on it. And then I was going through a divorce and I sold it to one of my buddies, and he took the car and he started working on it. Then he's going through a divorce and he sells me the car back. Right. So now I finished this car, and I had that car for years, and it used to sit on our showroom floor. In fact, that's, when we started selling parts on eBay forever ago, that's our name, 53 Ragtop.
Oh, really?
That's our seller name. Yeah. And, somebody came in, had to have it. I didn't really want to sell it. They paid enough and I sold it. And I kind of wish I never did, because it was just that one car that just was awesome.
No,
it was fun to drive. It was great. It had a great story, and probably should have never let that one go.
Was it custom or stock?
It was completely stock.
Really?
All the way down to the white walls. Yeah, it was cool. It was a great car.
And then, are you bug guy, bus guy? What do you prefer?
Well, you know what? I'm kind of all of it. The early days, I was obviously the bug guy, right? But I mean, not lately, the last 20 years, man, the buses have been just getting at me. I just love them. I can't have enough of them. I, find them wherever I can. In fact, if you look on my Facebook post just a couple days ago, I was down in Patagonia and stumbled across one down there and ended up being a customer of mine.
And like Patagonia, like the country?
No, Patagonia, where the lake is down here south of Tucson.
I'm like,
yeah. I've been taking Mondays off and just hanging out with the kids on Mondays.
Yeah.
And this was just one of those trips. We're going to go down to the lake. And so we stopped into town, and then I stumbled across this bus, and I'm like, oh man, I got to check that out. And it ended up I just sold them a bunch of lights and stuff for it. But yeah, I dig them out. I can smell them.
I had an experience like that one time back in the early 90s. I drove with a friend of mine. I just quit my job at a stereo shop. I think it was 1992. I remember because at his wedding, 5 years later, I pulled out the speeding ticket that I never paid on an Indian reservation that I got. And, and I looked at the date and I said, oh yeah, it was this date that we went there. And driving from Vegas to Reno, he says, yeah, I'm going to go look at a double cab. I'm like, all right, dude, I'll go. I just quit my job. So we drove up there, and his new 93 Prelude. And we're just cutting through all these little towns. And I'm like, make a left here, go right there, make a left. And we're just cutting through these weird towns. And lo and behold, come around the corner, boom, 62 Squareback sitting there with the mud flaps on it and the flat lenses and all this early stuff. And it's in Goldfield, Nevada. Matter of fact, the Bull Run bus that I own today, I actually found it on that trip in 1991. And it was like original paint, 13 window deluxe. All the parts were there. Motor was taken out for a Baja or for another car. And it was just there in Goldfield, Nevada, matching front and back California plates. Only thing was missing was the middle seat. God. I went back. I sold my Volkswagen in 2003. Not 2003. Excuse me. In 1993, I sold my ragtop bug when I blew the motor. After finishing my car, I blew the motor up, and I'm like, I'm through with Volkswagen. So I sold that one, and I get married in 99, and in 2000, we're driving up to Reno. I was managing a tile division over there, and I told my wife, I said, man, there's this cool bus here. If it's still here, I'm going to talk to the lady and buy it, because it'd be a cool car I could fix up and the whole family can ride in this bus, right? So I pull into town, and I mean, it's next to an abandoned mobile home that's been there for 40 years. I track down from the guy who's got it, go around the corner. I buy it from this gal for $100.
Oh my God.
So it's complete. Like to this day, every part on that bus, it's been completely redone. I redid the car in 2001. I took first place, the VW Classic, in 2002. And I've been driving that bus ever since. So I just pulled it off for like 2 years ago to do a quick refresh, and it hit a bit of a stall. But that car, I paid $100 for it, and it's like it was every piece of glass, less the windshields, because I have Safaris in it. Every piece of glass, the window frames, everything's original in that car. There was 0 rust repair needed, and the tags had expired in 1976. So it was 9 years old when it got parked and just abandoned. So that whole trip we went up there, I found 6 or 7 Volkswagens pulling through these towns like an old dude with a watering, or those what they call them, the watering rods, where they find.
Oh yeah, so you can find the water. Sure.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, my buddy's like, how are you doing this? I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm just in my head. I'm like, go left, go right. And then as soon as I start seeing I see a fiberglass fender, I start piecing it together. But from that one trip, 3 or 4 Volkswagens were picked up from that trail over the next 15 years, because it's this road that goes from Vegas to Reno that there's nothing on. And it's one of those things where like you're 400 miles from anywhere, and you're like, oh, it'd be cool if I had a trailer to take this, but nah, too much work. Don't want to track it down. But I stopped and got everybody's phone numbers on some of these places. So yeah, I know what you mean, man. There's so many things in these desert towns, because specifically I think of the heat in the desert, people would get these air-cooled cars because they wouldn't have to worry about them running hot or overheating. And you just have this, they're just tucked away. And even still today, I still think there's tons of them out there, Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll tell you one more quick story. Well, it's not that quick, but it's awesome. You asked me about cars that I wished I hadn't got rid of.
Yeah.
Here's another one. So there was a gentleman in town. The Volkswagen dealership was called J. Chamberlain's Pima Volkswagen. So J. Chamberlain owned the Volkswagen dealership in the 70s. Okay. And we knew each other. And Jay called me one day and he says, Joe, I'm working on my split window bug. Now this is years later. This must have been like, I don't know, 95, somewhere in that, maybe a little later than that.
Right.
He says, I'm working on my split window and I need some wiper arms and some little stuff. Do you have any of that? I said, yeah, let me go home. I'll grab that stuff and I'll come up to your house. Now this guy had the killer house. He lived up off of River Road, and just a regular modest house, but he had the killer garage, a big horseshoe like garage, with doors all on the inside. And he said, let me show you around. So he opens the door, his split's there, and he's working on it. And he's showing me some old race cars, old Porsche stuff. Cool stuff. The dude had great stuff from the dealership days. And over in the corner is this double cab, and I believe it was a 71. So it was the last upright motor, right?
Yeah.
And I'm all, Jay, what's the story? All these Porsches, all this stuff, and I'm zeroing in on this 71 double cab, right? And he's like, oh yeah, I kept that from the dealership. It's never been titled. I said, shut up. He says, no, go look at it. Had the dealer air in it, right? It was new. It had just been parked there, and they did use it around the lot a little bit, right? But they never titled this car. It was still a certificate of origin.
Really?
So, yeah, and I'm like, Jay, what? Sell me that. He goes, nope, they're going to bury me in that. I said, no way. So from time to time, there was a restaurant I would like to go to across from his house. It was an old steakhouse. In fact, John Wayne used to go there all the time when he was visiting Tucson. So I'd go to the steakhouse and stop in and see Jay. And I'd say, hey, Jay, how's my bus? Called it my bus, right? And he says, oh, it's not yours, it's mine. And they're going to bury me in it still. And it's still sitting in the same corner. Okay. Well, years go by, and I hear Jay had passed away.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like, damn, that sucks. I wonder what the boys, he had 2 sons. I wonder what they're doing with all of his stuff. And I'm not going to go knock on the door. I'm not an ambulance chaser. I'm just, if something happens, I'll hear about it.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, I'm going to dinner at that restaurant with my wife, and I see a car carrier out front of his house, and they're loading Porsches on it.
No way.
And I'm like, deep breath. I said, oh my God, I got to turn around. So I turn around and pull into the yard, right? Blow off dinner. And I walk up to the house, I knock on the door, and his wife was there. And it was his ex-wife, but they lived together forever afterwards. And I said, oh my God, she remembered me, and I was talking to her. I said, are the boys selling some stuff? She goes, yeah. I said, is the double cab still down there? She says, yeah, it's still down in the corner of the shop. I says, are you guys going to sell that? She goes, well, let me have Jamie call you, one of his sons. I said, okay. So a week goes by, nothing. 2 weeks go by, nothing. I go back over there. I said, I haven't heard from Jamie. She says, well, let me call my other son. He lives, I think, in Connecticut. And I don't think I'd ever met him before, but he moved to Connecticut or somewhere back on that coast. Anyway, I hear from him about a week later. He says, Joe, I hear you're interested in the double cab. I says, yes. He said, well, we'd like to sell you that. And I'm like, okay, we're halfway there, right? Yeah. And I said, he says, is there anything else you want there? And I said, yeah, you know what? There's some cool old stuff that, your dad had that I'd be interested in. There was, a cooler that went in a window, and, there was an old valve grinding machine that was just cool, and just some other little trinket stuff. He says, all right. He says, tell you what, we'll sell it to you for X. And I'm like, deal. And then he says, he says, my wife wants to tell you hello. And I said, what do you mean, your wife? And he's in Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
He says, yeah, my wife is Leanne McClellan. And I said, shut the F up. Now, Leanne McClellan sat in front of me in 4th grade. I used to pull her hair, right? I loved her. She moved away, and I never knew what happened to her, right? We split up, never lost contact with her. And I said, honest to God, I loved your wife. And we laughed and giggled, and, and we finished our phone call. I said, listen, do me a favor. He says, what's that? I said, tell Leanne I still love her.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was awesome to get the bus finally, and awesome to know what happened to this girl I loved back then,
Oh yeah. No, that's
so cool. And that was a bus. I kept that for years too. And it sat in my garage, and finally I said, I wonder what this thing's worth. And we let eBay decide what it was worth, and it paid out pretty well.
Yeah. That's, there's, that's kind of the thing, right? When you're in, everybody on the outside that's not in the hobby thinks, they'll think to themselves like, well, if I was a VW guy, I had a shop, I wouldn't sell anything. I'd keep it all. But I think the problem is in your day-to-day world, you probably get approached at least once a month, if not more. Like, hey, I got some VW parts and stuff. I want to know if you'll buy them or whatever. And so there's always like I've had it this week. I don't want to do any more deals. People are they're just sucking the money out of me. And what am I going to do with it? But it's like, you'll get stuff. There's the deal. And then you sell it, you turn it. And there's so much of that, I think, that takes place that it's hard for people to understand that at some point you can't keep everything, right? I mean, you gotta.
Right. Well, it's totally that way. It's totally that way. I mean, Frank has been here 25 years. He just walked in here and dumped some early taillights, Gia taillights, and the lenses for the front on my desk. And I said, "What's up?" He said, "I just bought these from a guy." I said, "Okay, cool, right?" When you hear me talking to him, that's what he was doing.
Right.
But I told you I started at the swap meets, right?
Yeah.
I never ended. Okay. I still love the swap meets. I will still go to Pomona every 6 weeks.
Really?
Because I can't get enough of original German stuff. And if you look up any of the Pomona stuff, you'll see my booth. It's ridiculous. It's 80 feet long with just all this German restored stuff. And I enjoy it. I go out with my son, or if he's not available, I call them my rent-a-sons, his friends.
Yeah.
And we go out, we set up, and we're there for a couple, 3 days. We we go out on a Friday, we set up Saturday, and we sell on Sunday, and then we tear down and come home. And I love it. I love it. I love just talking to the people, hearing their projects. What are you working on? I've got a ton of friends out there.
Yeah. Well,
it's just great. It's just
so are you
nice
still,
to be involved.
Are you still so they used to have a dedicated VW. I mean, I haven't been to Pomona to sell in probably 12 years. Since I've been there. And last time I went out there, we were seeing the effects of like the internet, right? Like it started.
Oh yeah, it is still that way.
The VW section evaporated pretty much. Like it's no longer existent to really any major degree. You might get on a specific weekend a dozen or two people selling, but last time I was there, I mean, now it's just they kind of mix everything in there because they're just selling the spaces, and the VW.
Right.
A lot of the VW guys have gone, and I think it's a generational thing, right? A lot of the VW guys have gone to online sales, but I think there's still something to be said about the experience, right? Going out there and getting involved with the scene
Oh, yeah.
and seeing people. And I mean, I'm sure it's great for business just for the fact that people know that you'll be there consistently. How long have you been going to Pomona?
Oh my God. So I took a small break, raising kids, but I mean, that was just, probably 30 years, I guess.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. And it's not only just to go sell. I mean, the guys will be saying, hey, we're out of lower ball joint arms, right? They're the ones that all rot out. And
Right.
I'll be out there buying every freaking ball joint front end or ball joint arm I can. We're out of cores, we're buying tranny cores. So, I mean, it's cool because, we sell stuff and we buy stuff. So
Yeah.
it just keeps fresh stuff coming through that we're always consuming. We press ball joints in and ship them out. Nobody sends their arms back.
Oh yeah.
Right. So we're constantly chasing cores.
So even if you're charging a core charge, people just eat the core charge.
Oh yeah. Well, the problem is geographically they eat it up in freight, right? So it's not worth, sending them back.
Yeah.
So they end up throwing them away or whatever. Who knows what happens to them?
Now, as long as you've been in the hobby, what are some of the things that you've seen come to development in the hobby since you've been in the game 40 years especially on the service and mechanical and customization and car building side? What are some of the things that you've seen that have affected the hobby a lot, whether it's been a new product, a development of a product, remanufacturing of a product? Have you seen anything that you can pinpoint and say, yeah, when they came out with this, it really made a huge difference with respect to car building?
Well, so there's a ton of that, to create more market for the Volkswagens.
Uh-huh.
But I'll tell you the one thing that's hurt the industry hugely.
Yeah.
We talk about being in the desert, off-roading and all that. The sandrail guys, the higher end sandrail, the cheapy chuggers are still out there. The ones that take out and they bend the tie rods and all that.
Right.
They're still out there. But the guys with the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 cars that would blow up trannies constantly and, come in and buy rack and pinions, those cars are all parked. And the side-by-side industry killed that market.
Yeah. That is no doubt, especially when I think the LS had a huge part to do with that. A lot of these guys started going to LS motors.
Oh yeah.
So I used to be, 5 years ago, I had a sand car. I'd go out to the sand dunes. We'd go every President's Day, every Halloween, every New Year's. Those were the 3 holidays that we would do. And then I ended up getting a side-by-side because we would do these long trips and all this kind of stuff. And then it was just kind of like, well, I can take my side-by-side out there. It's not as fun because, with a sand car, you drive with the throttle.
Right.
With a side-by-side, you're driving with all the momentum you can carry.
Right.
But yeah, that's made a huge difference. Matter of fact, I'm waiting on a friend of mine who hopefully, I'm sure he's not listening to the podcast because he's not a VW guy. But he's got a Mazzone style sand car that I saw sitting on his rack. And he's like, yeah, I wanted to sell it, but nobody would give me X amount of thousands of dollars for it. And I said, I'll give you that for it. Cause I saw that motor in the back and I thought, well, shoot, that's gotta be at least a 2110, if not bigger than that. Cause it looks like it's seriously worked. And I know my buddy, the guy that I'm getting it from, he's the kind of guy that gets a new Polaris every other year. And so I'm sure when he was doing the sand car thing, he was getting the baddest of the bad. And I just and that's what I see a lot of people doing, right? Because these sand cars are selling for super cheap. And so you're getting these big monster motors. And as long as you're not grabbing these alcohol motors, you're going to do.
Oh, you're getting good stuff. Yeah.
You're getting a great combination of things. Now, have you done any work with like A-arm suspensions and stuff like that, or any of that stuff that's been on the scene for a little bit?
Well, so yeah, when A-arm cars were big and everybody was selling parts for that, yeah, we bought a lot of stuff from Danny Fodrell, and we're resellers of that. But our core business was the widened beams, the longer arms, the 4-inch overs, the coilover arms, the combo spindles, that stuff. We sold tons of that stuff.
Yeah.
We'd bring pallets of that stuff in and it would be gone, but those days are over. Those days are long over.
Yeah. So,
but and you talked about you buying a Polaris. I'm guilty too.
Yeah.
But I will say last week, 2 weekends ago,
I had a Can-Am, but
oh, no, of course you do.
Well, here's
on my Facebook. My Polaris is kick ass.
I know. Listen, I even switched gears after I totaled my Can-Am in Mexico. When I got the total money from it, I thought I'm gonna buy another car, but I'm gonna get a 2-seater, and I ended up picking up a double X Textron double X. So I've got that thing, and it's a little bit thin on power, but it is way good on suspension. And that's the thing with the off-road world, right? I mean, you look at these cars that have 1,000cc motors, and I mean, you can run these things through the paces, you know?
Right.
I've got video of me in Mexico on Whoop Road, which is coming out of Bay of LA, and you're talking 45 mile an hour across 3-foot whoops, just moving. You know what I mean? Because the problem is it's 5 miles of whoops, which it might not sound like a lot on paper, but as soon as you get behind the wheel and you start hitting those whoops, 5 miles of that's a lot. So, but it's incredible because you'll take these cars, and, you know, previously I used to go to Mexico on these trips, and we would do 1,000 miles. We'd unload in San Felipe, and we do 1,000-mile trip through Mexico. And I mean, it's just it's incredible. And part of me, I think to myself, when I was last time doing it, I thought, this would be super cool to do it in like an old Baja. And I'm like, what am I thinking?
Let me tell you something. Joe used to do that.
But I
raced Baja many times.
So off-road
with
racing,
Baja bugs.
Off-road racing, you've actually raced in some sanctioned races.
Oh yeah, totally.
So in what class would you run?
Well, we did class 5, and then we did class 10.
Now class 5 was
all Volkswagen powered.
Unlimited.
You know, we
Baja?
didn't do any of the others. Yep, Baja bug, unlimited Baja bug. So it was, 12-inch over beam, blah blah blah, all the crazy stuff. I mean, it was basically a buggy with a body on it.
Right.
And yeah, we took that down we raced the 1,000 with that car. We flipped it many times. Then we did a 10 car down in there. I got a story for you with the 10 car.
And now
that's the unlimited 10 car, but 16 unlimited suspension, but a 1,600 motor.
Okay, so 1,600 cc, and
yeah, but I mean,
suspension.
built to the hilt, bulletproof, 1,600,
like a Chenworth kind of car, a full chassis car.
Mine was a Fodrell car.
Right.
Okay.
But
we were, God, I don't even remember where it was. Somewhere around Mike's Sky Ranch.
Mm-hmm.
We were running, and I remember jumping down into this ravine, and I thought, oh boy, there's some trucks down there, and one of them was Mirrors, right?
Yeah.
And when I went, he was rolled over, and they were trying to winch him out. But when I went through, I nerfed him a little bit, right?
Uh-oh.
And I'm like, oh shit! And I kind of gave him the wave, and I take off, right?
Like, sorry about that, buddy.
Yeah. Well, he said sorry about that, buddy, to me about an hour later.
Oh, really? Caught you?
So yeah. So all I heard is, whoa. I could feel his engine over mine, and I felt, boom, he hits the back of my car. I'm like, nowhere for me to go. I've got ocean on one side and a wall on the other, right?
Right.
Boom. Basically, we're on a 1-lane trail, and he's boom, boom, and I'm like, oh man, this is faster than this car's ever gone. He's pushing me, right?
Wow.
He's pushing me while he's hitting me, and when we come out of it, I dip off to the side, and he just whoop and blows on by me, right? I hit my throttle, wing, 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 and I'm like, what? Downshift, wing, wing, nothing. I'm like, what happened? I got out and looked. He had shoved my engine and transmission forward probably 4 or 5 inches, broke the axles. The CVs were broken, but I couldn't hear any of this over his engine.
Really?
Yeah. The crazy part is, when I went through the previous checkpoint,
yeah,
for some reason they didn't check me going through. I got the stub in my can, but they didn't check me going through. So my pit was looking for me back the other direction.
Oh, no way.
They didn't know I'd crossed this next point. I was between the next two checkpoints, right?
Yeah.
I sat out there and talked to the lizards for hours, all by myself. It got dark. And then I hear a 3-wheeler. I hear an ATC, right? That's when those were big.
Yeah.
And these 2 Mexican kids come up, locals from down there. And we were trying to communicate, and I had no food. I had nothing, right? I had a Snickers bar, I think. Anyway, these kids, all they had on them was bananas and Coronas. They left me a handful of bananas and a handful of Coronas, and they said, we're going to be back. And no kidding, those kids went to a ranch, got a truck, and towed me to the next checkpoint.
No way.
It was freaking awesome. It was a story I'll never forget.
Well, you know, and there's definitely like a whole thing with Mexico. You know, I used to go quite a bit, and those days are behind me now because I got caught up over there. Spent 2 months in the prison over there, so I won't be going back anytime soon. But there's definitely an allure to the openness of it and the desolateness of it. You know, and anytime you get around people, it gets a little hairball. But it's definitely, you know, I had a long conversation with Bruce Meyer. I had him on the podcast, and he wrote a book about the Baja and just about you know it's incredible because you can just go for hours without seeing somebody and just going through so much different terrain, from running along the ocean to tight trails in a canyon to wide open, their highways, which is just a dirt road. You know what I mean? And these guys get from town to town on these dirt roads, and it's pretty wild. You'll be hauling the mail, coming around the corner, and there's an 82 Ford long bed just pumping away, and then you got to slam on the binders and kind of go around it. But it's always definitely, it was definitely one of my favorite things.
This is a crazy one. I remember racing down there, right?
Yeah.
And some of the guys saying, hey, be careful, they've got some traps out there. Well, the locals would do crazy stuff. For instance, they would dig a huge hole. Okay. Right. They would drag plastic over it and then cover it with sand. Okay. So when you go by, your car falls in this big hole.
Yeah.
So I'm motoring along and I see just a wheel sticking out of the earth spinning. Right. It was the guy that was in front of me who fell into this big hole.
Yeah.
And, you know, they would get a kick out of it, and it was great and it was fun, but I mean, it could have been dangerous too.
No, it's a little different out there. They don't got a lot of cable TV and stuff. So when it comes time to pick on the gringos, man, they've got it wired over there. But I mean, that's the thing about the VW hobby. There's so many different platforms that you can go on with it. And if you're a shop that's diversified, where you're doing, you know, off-road cars, street cars, restorations, and everything across the board, I can see how you're staying constantly busy because you do a little bit of everything, you know, and it's all based off the same platform. It's just the suspension's a little different on that one, and the engine's a little different on that one, but all the, you know, the whole premise of everything is the same. So I think it's pretty rad. I mean, I definitely think it's a hobby it's got to be in your blood, because it's the highest highs and the lowest lows, especially, you know. You know, when you're out there racing and something, you know, I mean, clearly getting rear ended something different, but like something simple just costs you everything, you know?
Right.
And it becomes lesson time, right? Like, well, okay, I'll never forget that one thing ever again.
Oh my God. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So now so when's the last time you raced off road?
Oh man, it's been a long time. Yeah, I've had a couple back cut opens and all that stuff, but yeah, it's just been a long time.
Yeah,
it's probably been at least 20 years since I've raced.
You have any experience drag racing?
Not really. You know, we got Johnny.
Yeah,
and we get to live through Johnny.
Johnny's,
you know,
drag racing poster boy. He's the guy that gets out there and gets in all kinds of trouble.
Oh yeah, I was out there with him last weekend, and he blew up his transmission.
Yeah,
you know, it's his car's got a zipper. He needs to paint a zipper on the whole back of the car because it's open every weekend.
Yeah. There's no question. So Churco does everything from restorations to modifications to customizing, from tune-ups to building a whole car.
Absolutely. Well, our newest thing, I told you back in the 80s when we first started, we were making Baja kits and all that stuff.
Right.
Well, it became earlier in EPA and blah, blah, blah. It came earlier just to buy that stuff, right? And we were buying that stuff from Mark V, who was around forever, out of Nevada.
Out of Boulder City, yeah.
Well, here about 2 years ago, Mark sold the company to one of his employees. Well, they cut off all their dealers.
Really?
They thought they were going to be king of the hill and just be retail. Right. Here we're sitting here with purchase orders in and sales, and we're not getting orders. I'm like, call them. What's going on? Well, you know, we're behind. Same old story. So I'm like, all right, I've done this before. and I've got an entire complete fabrication plant now for fiberglass.
Really?
We make all the Baja kits. We make all the one-piece front ends. We make all the Gia front ends. We make anything in fiberglass, the wire covers, the dashes, everything right here in Tucson in our facility.
Oh, wow. So
that's totally under our control again.
So that's worked out pretty good for you. And there's definitely no shortage of the fiberglass products being needed, you know?
Oh, no. Yeah, no. I mean, the guys with Baja bugs, they're tearing the fenders off every weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, they're tearing them up. I mean,
they're all just starting with IRS cars now.
Exactly. Yeah, not putting IRS in a swing axle, right?
Right. They were back in the day.
That's what we had to do.
I just drove home today from my buddy's shop. I picked up a '54 Baja from a guy in Colorado for a friend of mine in the UK, and he's just like, dude, there's nothing cooler than an oval window Baja, which is like, you know, to most of us, it's like sacrilegious, but now enough time has passed. There's enough nice old oval windows out there that it's kind of cool to see an oval window Baja. You know, it's just
I mean, you know, somebody did it in the 80s. Right. Nobody cared.
Right, exactly right. You know? Exactly right. And that's just what's funny is it's all coming full circle now. Like all the 70s paint schemes, and if you can find a Survivor car from the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there's a guy out here that's got some kind of really, really funky, for sure 80s, if not late 70s built. I forget the kind of car. It's a really wild fiberglass sports car, but it's like an open top. It looks kind of like a futuristic Myers-Manx, and I forget the name of it. But this thing's gold, and it's got all the shadowing and the graphics, the sun, the moon, the cactus, all that stuff airbrushed on the side. Yeah. And I keep thinking like, that'd be a cool thing to get and just kind of shine that thing back up and cruise it around, because I've been seeing guys dragging trikes out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Just because it's like, it was Volkswagen and it was cool, you know? So yeah. There's a lot of stuff. So what is the future you see for Churco?
Gosh, you know, so my son I'll put was in there, playing baseball in Nebraska. And he came home from this year at college and he says, you know, Dad, I think I'm done. I said, Santo, you can't be done.
Right.
I love watching you play. You can't be done. He says, yeah, I think I'm going to think about it. I said, all right, but he's been coming in every day.
Yeah.
So it's a possibility there'll be a torch passed.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 60.
Right.
The business has got lots of legs to it. You know, I mean, it's going to last a long time, whether I sell it or hand it off to one of the kids. I talk to people all the time and they're like, God, it's got to stay. And I'm not tooting my own horn or anything. It's iconic on 22nd Street in Tucson.
Right.
You drive past all the Volkswagens. It has to be there. It's like part of Tucson, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, it'll probably stay. I don't know. You know, I want to do it another 4 or 5 years, and then I want to travel. You know, I want to do other stuff.
Your success that you've had to stay in business through a couple of recessions and some other things like that. I mean, 84 was the pits, right? And it was the tail end of, I think 82 was the beginning of the recession. And
right.
Then, you know, it
was a terrible time to open a business.
Right. You went through the other one in 08.
But you can't teach us nothing, right?
Absolutely. And then, you know, it's been a tumultuous time. Now, how has Churco changed? I mean, you mentioned that you guys sell a lot of stuff online. You sell a lot of stuff on eBay.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Honestly, we've watched that business go away.
Really?
Well, so retail has changed. We still do a ton of mail order, right? But it's not like it was. I mean, we would have UPS trucks and freight trucks backed up to our docks loading, right?
Yeah.
It's not like that anymore. What's happened is, I mean, you go on Amazon, for instance, right now.
Yeah.
And sadly, you can buy a carburetor for $58. Right. Where, for instance, we're buying them from Impy for $100.
Right.
Just throwing a number out there. Right. Well, what's happened is the factories in China are selling directly on Amazon now.
Yeah.
Right. So the warehouse, the jobber, that old distribution thing, that's history.
Yeah.
That's gone. In fact, that's part of the reason I said, you know what, I'll take fiberglass back on. The only reason you're going to compete with me in fiberglass is if you're dumb enough to spend all the money to make these molds.
Right.
Then you can compete with me.
Yeah.
Right. Otherwise, I'm going to make all the fiberglass and I'm going to sell all the fiberglass. That's my niche. I'm going to do that now. The restorations, I'm going to do that. I'm still going to sell the parts, and I'm going to sell the parts to all these cars we work on. You know, if I go out front right now and just take a video, there's probably 15, 20 cars in the parking lot waiting to get into service.
Wow.
You know, our business is still really good. And, but the way business is done today is so much different than the way it was done in 1984. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's always the ebbs and flows of things. And it seems that in my business that I'm in, I've always, you know, we're celebrating our 20th year in business, but it's always, my business every 5 years has changed, like our main customer. And it's
your pivot.
You know, it's always one of these things where we figure out, we're trying to pay attention which way the market's going and be ready for the direction it heads, and just trying to support that, because there's always a new game in town or something different, but the market's always going somewhere else. So, you know, you've always got to have multiple income streams. You know, you've got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you can't just stick to one thing, because that one thing will go real strong for a while and then it dies off. And then this section of the business gets busier. And that's what I've always found out looking at my business, you know, looking at the ebbs and flows of different market segments, you know, if you will, whether it's, you know, if you're looking at like off-road stuff to street stuff to restorations to parts to fiberglass stuff, you know, so there's always a wide array of that. So, I mean, you've done a great job. I mean, you bought out your competitor. You're in a real limited market like Tucson. You're staying busy. You got 6 space. How's it been finding technicians?
That's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. So, you know, a lot of the good guys have passed away, right? All the old timers that just knew it have passed away. I mean, I went, you know, honestly, I pulled a couple guys from Mexico. You know, and they're phenomenal.
I've been telling some people, some friends of mine own VW shops. I said, I would put ads in the Mexican paper because that's been the car for decades down there. And there's going to be guys that know how to work on stuff, you know, and I always just, I don't know. That was just kind of my thought that, that would be a good thing, but you've kind of proved my point, because you're finding worthwhile guys that have the experience and the work ethic.
And let me tell you something. You just nailed it. The work ethic, those guys are self-motivated. Yeah. You give them a project, right? They know what they're going to do today. You can look into their bay and they don't stop.
Yeah.
They earn their money and they love what they're doing. And it shows. And in fact, I mean, a couple of these guys, I got a guy, Carlos, here right now. And Carlos blows my mind. He shows me some stuff, and I'm like, what? I mean, tricks.
Right.
Stuff that they do in Mexico.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, dang, I would have never thought about that. Or simple cleaners, you know, to like restore chrome.
Right.
They've got some stuff they mix up themselves, and it's, you brush it on with a brush and it looks better than new.
Really?
No polishing. Right. And I'm like, get the hell out of here. You know, it's just amazing that just, you know, 50 miles, 60 miles away in another country from us, they do it totally different, but do it well.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think, you know, again, with the other sphere of your business being like service, okay. Yeah. I can't be like everybody else and say, there's just no techs. I've got to figure out, where can I find the technicians? Where can I find the guys
yeah.
Get it done?
Well, you know, so you'd probably agree with me on this. You're a business owner. Mm-hmm. I mean, most businessmen, right? And I know a lot of them. You know, we do the breakfast meetings with different guys and I told you my brother's in the granite business, just like you. And we talk to different people, and, you know, we kind of keep in tune with what's going on. But most guys, if they were in my business, they would say, you're an idiot to continue because you have to continually change and fight and figure out the next thing. It's just not the same. No, you're right. That's why I'm here 40 years, is because of my grit.
Right.
And my passion for this car. Well, you know, of course I'm going to make the business work.
You know, the thing that I was just saying some other day, I said there couldn't be a more fitting name for this car, because the people whether it's hobbyists, enthusiasts, guys that promote shows, to guys that have sacrificed so much for the love of the hobby to be able to either start a business, promote an event, or set up a special, something where someone really commits a lot of time, effort, and energy. And it's because there's just something about the people. When you meet VW people that are committed to the cause, that are not fair, because that's the part that I reference a lot on the podcast. In the 80s, when I grew up, like, the mini truck guy was the guy who had a good job as a busboy at one of the hotels, was making good money, could afford payments. The VW guy was the guy that didn't have the money. His family didn't have money, but he wanted to be cool. So he had to go build his own cool. But there was a long-term commitment to staying in that hobby because of the love you found from the capability instilled in yourself from building your own car, for whether it's from building your own engine to putting it together and like looking at your car and saying, yeah, but it was a pile of parts when I got it. And now it's a running, driving vehicle. So, I mean, I think the amount of people that have been in their life that have been given the self-confidence and accomplishment of being able to build something from a pile of nuts and bolts and miscellaneous parts and pieces, the confidence it's given people, is endless. I don't know what other vehicle that's out there that has enthusiasts that are like this, because even if you're talking Porsches and stuff like that, you have to be on another level of being able to afford stuff. Volkswagen people have really...
We're regular people.
Yeah, and they're people that have to make... You look at everything they do. The platform is like your base, is like the Model T. But they never off-road raced a Model T. They never, they never had all these different platform styles off the base Model T, other than the custom car culture a little bit. But when you look at everything from, off-road racing to drag racing to street cars, I mean, and now you're talking drivable 150, 175 horsepower street cars.
Oh,
And now the bus game is so crazy. Who'd have thunk in the 80s, like, everybody would be wanting a bus. Buses would be the coolest thing, and just the whole stigma behind it. So I love the hobby, and I love talking to guys like you, man, that have just been in it the whole time and just committed to it. So I appreciate you. I appreciate.
No, I was just going to say real quick.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I do too. And I was just going to say, you're talking about this iconic car, right? It seems like everybody, all walks of life, everybody has a Volkswagen story, right? Like I said, we're here on 22nd Street. I'll get old people, 70s, 80s. They'll come in their regular car and they'll park and they'll come in the store. And they just stand in the doorway and they look, right? Because we got cars on our showroom floor and stuff. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're talking to each other. Hey, you talk to them, how you doing? And they'll say, when I was this, and they get into a story, when I was in the military. And you just, and it's not far and few, it's all the time.
Yeah. People
stop in just to reminisce. It's awesome.
Yeah. It's definitely a car that crosses a lot of, it's cut through a lot of society from people and their different connections to the hobby. So it's something that for me has been, I was in a documentary back when I debuted my bus. So talk about being on a high, right? I get out of the VW hobby. I get married. I have a kid or two. Next thing I know, I'm building a bus. I've never been a car show guy. I never wanted a show before this. I build my bus because now I got two nickels to rub together. Build my bus. I debuted at the VW Classic. And then I'm interviewed for a documentary that same day. It's me, Randy Carlson, and Bob Hole from Bugaramas. They interview us, and when they interviewed me, they said, "What do you think about your Volkswagen?" And I said, "Well, the coolest thing about my Volkswagen," I said, because I have a '65 Riviera. When I take my Buick to the gas station, people usually say, "My uncle had one, my grandpa had one," but when I pull up in a Volkswagen, everyone has a story connected to a Volkswagen.
100%.
And
100%.
And the diversity, the insane thing is the diversity of the owners is through the roof. I mean, you've got from bus boys to business owners and everything in between. It's incredible. So I love this hobby, man. It's the reason why I commit the time that I do to this podcast, that I love getting these stories out to people and letting people know these inside stories about Dean Lowry living in Tucson, Arizona, and Joe Churco peeking over his shoulder and what happened to that dyno? Well, we know what happened to the dyno now, right? And then
I know exactly where it's at.
So no, I think that's rad. And I'm glad we got to chat on the podcast. Anything we didn't cover you think that you want to cover?
No, I mean, I had a great time talking, and I could talk about this industry forever, but it's just great to share what I can. And you spoke of Bruce Myers, and when they did that coast to coast trip, he actually broke down in Tucson.
Oh, really? And
ended up at my counter, and we fixed him and got him down the road. But it was nice because he's a humble man too, as you know, and he's
super humble.
He sat across me at the counter, and I was talking about Dean, and I was talking to him about, thanking him because he was such an instrument in this. And he was like, no, I did nothing. No, you, sir, you're a badass.
Yeah.
You didn't even realize it, so that's what's cool about the industry is we're all just regular guys doing this thing out of passion. And it's just cool.
Well, Joe, I'm glad we got to chat and get your story. And if you're ever in Tucson, Arizona, man, head directly over to Churco, go say hey to Joe, check out the showroom, see what they're working on. And, I'm sure we'll hear from you in the future. And by all means, your Bugtoberfest, make sure I'll shoot you my email and send me information on that so I can promo that for you. And I'm going to see if I can get down there and check out Bugtoberfest. So this year, you have a date for this year?
It's the third Sunday, so I just got to look at a calendar.
So the third Sunday of October, which is, I'll tell you right now, third Sunday in October is going to be, well, that'd be great if I could get back to let me go to my year view. And that's going to be third Sunday is going to be the 19th of October. So
there we are.
October 19th this year. And and that event that you guys do, it starts on, is there something that happens?
So it starts on Saturday.
Okay.
Saturday people start camping next door, which is going to be a whole nother thing, but that's pretty cool. It's a mini Woodstock over there.
Okay.
And then Sunday's the show here. So we do a cruise on Saturday afternoon, and we do a barbecue, and I'll post all that stuff on the website.
Well, very cool, man. But you know what? I'll see if I can make it out this year. I know Johnny asked me to come out this year, and it just didn't work with Mike. I had so much going on, but for sure, I would love to get out there and come support your event, man.
We would love to have you.
Well, Joe, thanks for coming on the podcast, man. I appreciate everything.
Absolutely. Thank you for everything you do for the industry.
Well, if you like that podcast, and I know you did, make sure you share, subscribe, and help us grow the podcast. Send it out to all your favorite VW friends, even some that you don't like. They need help too. So send them a link to the podcast. The more listeners, the better it is for all of us because we get to share this hobby with all those that we know are into it. So share the podcast. Don't forget to register for One Crazy Weekend. It's already starting to pop off. It's shaping up to be an incredible One Crazy Weekend this year. So don't forget, come check me out. Watch the live stream from Impy. Go subscribe to their YouTube channel today, Impy YouTube channel. I will be live streaming Saturday's engine shootout with Adam Wick live from Impy headquarters in Orange County, California. It's going to be a great time to listen to a guy who doesn't know a lot, yours truly, with a guy who knows a lot, Adam Wick. So it'll be good. I assure you, you'll at least giggle once or think to yourself, man, Bill is dumb. But you know what? I'm going to have a good time with it. I'm super stoked to be part of this and to do it with Adam because he's not really in your face kind of guy, but one-on-one we have really good conversations and I'm looking forward to getting his insight because that guy's a wealth of knowledge when it comes to engines, performance and building and all that stuff. So it should make for a fantastic combination of people to discuss the engine dyno shootout. And we're doing the final day, man, the guys that take the money. That's right. So go subscribe today at Impy's YouTube channel so you get notified of their live stream. Don't forget to turn your notifications on. And when you guys are on there, if you're Let's Talk Dubs listeners, you guys type in there, Let's Talk Dubs forever. Let's Talk Dubs forever. I appreciate all of you guys out there been sending me some messages recently. I got a ton of birthday messages today from a lot of friends, listeners, and podcast alumni. So I appreciate all you guys. Looking forward to seeing you guys down there. I'll be at the DKP meet on Friday with the Chop Top. So if you see me and you come say, yo, Bill T, what do you got? You might get something special. You might get a little kick down of something that I'll bring with me for just listeners. So if you're a listener, I ran into a couple people this last weekend at the RVA show. And if you haven't checked that video, I'll go to my YouTube channel and check it out. But I ran into a guy, I said, Let's Talk Dubs. I said, do you listen to the podcast? He said, of course I do. I said, come here. Come here, you. I gave him a little something special. So that could happen to you. Make sure you let me know you're a listener when you run into me. And, listen, I don't just love to talk on the radio. I love to chop it up in person. So look forward to meeting you guys. Shout out to Larry from Houston that was down there at the RVA show. Got to hang out with him for a few minutes, and all the other people that are not coming to memory right now because I had a crazy day. Don't tell George, but I slept on the ride home, and it was a crazy day. Go check out the video, and until next week, guys, later.
You probably don't know that there's a new Volkswagen out that doesn't look like a Volkswagen.